Hearing everything. Can I just, on a bit of housekeeping, two things. First of all, could you turn off your, please, first of all, the council here has 2 or 3 of its sort of officers. There's Sam Callender, whom a lot of you will know, who looks after membership, etc. Tony Strawson, and of course Jonathan Hart, our chief CEO, and other members of the Business Council. We are very pleased to talk to any of you on a luncheon and to introduce the guests. Once again, thank you very much indeed, and we look forward to a most interesting...
Hopefully in the next few seconds. My name is Ikai Mshinge. I'm in charge of economic issues here at the High Commission. Most of you know me. Honourable Minister, Honourable Robert Chinga, Minister of Agriculture and Livestock, the Deputy Minister of Mines, Honourable Richard Musufa, the Deputy Minister in charge of Transport and Communications, Honourable Colonel Panji Kaunda, the Acting High Commissioner who is about to walk in, Mr. Chola Chama.
About 2 minutes.
Okay. Mr. Chola Chama, Mr. David Lam, the Chairperson for the Business Council for Africa, and the members of the BCA, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Zambia House, and welcome to the Business Council for Africa Investment event for Zambia. As a High Commission, we're very proud to be associated with this event, and we're just so happy that you are all able to make it. I'm just going to run you through some quick housekeeping issues. The conveniences are on, when you go out, just on the right, clearly labeled, ladies and gents. The cloak rooms are just outside the door. I hope none of you missed them. If so, maybe you can just hand over your coat to one of the staff behind and you can hang up your coat. Lunch will be served at 13:45, and we hope that you can all stay and experience Zambian hospitality further. And then this event officially ends at 2:30, but there are opportunities for one-on-one meetings with the Honourable Minister. And now I'm very honoured to introduce to you the Acting High Commissioner, Mr. Chola Chama, to address us and introduce the next speakers. Mr. Chama, sir.
Minister of Agriculture and Livestock of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. David Lam, Chairperson of the Business Council for Africa, Mr. Andrew Chikwende, Director General of the Zambia Development Agency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I want to first of all apologize on behalf of the Zambia High Commission for the delay in this program this morning. This was due to the fact that we experienced a technical fault with our key address system. So we're trying to make alternative arrangements. And so that derailed coming. We apologize for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the Zambia High Commission is very delighted to have partnered with the Business Council for Africa to host this event. Our previous engagements with the Council have included their support in 2012 during the visits of His Excellency the President of the Republic of Zambia, His Excellency Mr. Michael Sata, as well as that of our Vice President, Dr. Guy Scott. In addition, this mission has addressed the Business Council for Africa members before in 2011 on the economic environment in Zambia. This was at the Business Council Africa headquarters. We are therefore happy that this time around the BCA members have come here to Zambia House to meet you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as the representatives of the Zambian government in the United Kingdom, one of our mandates is to promote trade and investment in Zambia. Therefore, we are encouraged by BCA's engagement with us. We believe that this is good for the members, it's good for its members, it's good for Africa, and it's good for Zambia in particular. The Zambian government, ladies and gentlemen, under the leadership of His Excellency Mr. Michael Sata, is committed to the ideals of development cooperation. This commitment is demonstrated by the presence of our Honorable Minister, Honorable Robert Sichinga, and the Director of the Zambia Development Agency, Mr. Andrew Chikwende, who will address us on agribusiness and investment opportunities available in Zambia. I am indeed honored to introduce to you Honorable Sichinga.
Ministers right here.
And two other ministers who are here. Honorable Panji Kaunda, who is Deputy Minister in charge of transport. The name of Kaunda is not new to many of you. So your connection of that name to Zambia represents Honorable Panji Kaunda right here. That is the connection. It's a name you can't miss in African and world affairs. I am also privileged to introduce to you Honorable Richard Musukwa. is my Deputy Minister in charge of mines and energy in the Republic of Zambia. My government, ladies and gentlemen, is committed to developing partnerships and cooperation in the areas of trade and investment. My Honorable Minister here, Honorable Chinga, let me say a few things about him. With a total of more than 38 years of experience in both the private and parastatal sectors, is well versed with issues of pertaining to both sides of the coin, trade and investment. He has spent most of his life in those areas. He has served on several boards in various areas of the economy, and his consultants' work has included the review of the Zambia Investment Agency Act, which establishes the very agency and stipulates various incentives available to investors. Distinguished members, ladies and gentlemen, it is clear, therefore, that you are in good hands. And this combines very well with our other speaker for the day, who is, as I said earlier, Andrew Chukwende, the Director General of the Zambia Development Agency. Mr. Chukwende is also well versed with the link between political, business, and commercial processes associated with private sector development. As Director General of the Zambia Development Agency, he is at the helm of promoting trade and investment in Zambia through an efficient, effective, and coordinated private sector-led economic development strategy. The combined messages of our two speakers will indeed convince you that Zambia is indeed an investment destination of choice in Africa. I also wish to recognize the presence of Xavier Chibia, Xavier Chibia, who is the Managing Director of Barclays Bank Zambia. Barclays Bank is a strategic partner in development in Africa in general, and in Zambia in particular. Barclays Bank sponsored this year's investment roundtable conference, which was held yesterday here in London. If you missed that conference, we make up this morning, this one. So if Barclays Bank, if Barclays Bank therefore is not giving you loans, ask Xavier is here. Ask him why not. Yes, he says, ask them why they keep deducting money from my account. Because if I leave money there, the next time I check my balance, Barclays have deducted something. Ask Xavier. I said, I'll ask Xavier why they does it. Ladies and gentlemen, there will be a video presentation, and after that, I shall have the honor to invite the Honorable Minister to address us. For now, shall I simply say thank you very much. Slight correction. The order of things is that first it's Mr. Andrew Chikwende, and the video show will come after. Slight so Mr. Andrew Chikwende.
Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Livestock, Mr. Box Chinda, Member of Parliament, the Deputy Minister of Works, Transport and Communication, Honorable Keno Panchikaunda, the Deputy Minister responsible for Mines and Energy, Honorable Richard Musukwa, His Excellency, the High Commissioner of Zambia to the United Kingdom, Mr. Chora Chama, Mr. David Lam, Chairman of the Business Council of Africa, may I simply say distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My short presentation is meant to just give a broad outline of our investment framework in Zambia. We can go to the next slide. I'll just talk about the two key strengths that an investor should look for in looking at Zambia, your key investment considerations. How does Zambia look from a foreign perspective, FDI trends over the last few years, and why you should invest in Zambia. If you are looking at Zambia, it's always important to look at it from the regional context. If you look at the country itself, at 18.1 million people, it's a small economy. But if you look at Zambia in terms of its membership of COMESA, SADC, and the soon-to-be tripartite, which will include Eastern Africa, then potentially you are looking at a market of up to $1.6 trillion US, or representing 50% of Africa's gross domestic product. Zambia is land-linked with 8 neighbors, which provides a unique opportunity in terms of market, as well as preferential market access opportunities that we have as a country into the European Union under the Everything But Arms initiative, where you can export everything except arms, into the USA through the Africa Growth Opportunity Act. China and India have given Africa, including Zambia, preferential market access for selected products. Go to the next slide. Just some key economic indicators. If you look at our area, Zambia in terms of size at the global level is ranked 39th in terms of size. Nominal GDP ranks as about 103rd in the world. Last year's growth rate was 7.3, making it the 24th, correction, 24th fastest growing country in the world. Our major trading partners include China, Saudi Arabia, but the one that stands out is the DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo, because if you're investing in Zambia, a number of studies by the World Bank and so on show that you don't need to look into the bigger markets such as the EU or Asia or the US, but regional trade probably is the route to go if you're doing business in Zambia, whether investing in agriculture, in energy, and so on. In fact, Congo now has become our official largest market, surpassing South Africa. And last year alone, we had exports close to 1.2 billion in the DRC. We expect the Minister of Commerce again to lead the delegation trade mission to Congo this year as a way of continuing to boost trade with that country. Of course, there's still a number of issues that we need to address, such as having a bilateral trade agreement, which our colleagues in South Africa already have, and so on. In terms of the global competitive competitiveness index, which is published, Zambia is ranked 15th in Africa and 113th overall. Inflation as of February was 6.9%, and the outlook is that it should end out at about 7 for the year. Our national debt, that's domestic and external, represents about 31% of our gross domestic product, which from an economic perspective that essentially indicates that if you look at the growth that we are recording, the level of our national debt, it means that we have a lot of legroom as a country to raise additional financing to address our infrastructure challenges that include road, electricity, rail, ports, education, and other human capital elements. I think we all know about Zambia in terms of its importance in terms of copper and cobalt. It's a leading African producer in Africa of copper. The forecast is that with the investment that is going in by some of the major players, by 2015, we should be producing about 1.5 million tons of copper, making us the 5th largest producer in the world from the 7 where we currently stand. Why is it important? The health, the performance of the mining sector continues to be a barometer for the performance of the overall economy. When the mining sector does badly, the overall health of the economy also declines. So this is the best indicator that shows the continued health of the economy, and the forecasts in the medium term to long term remain healthy for mining as well as for agriculture. According to the IMF, Zambia is forecast to be among the 10 fastest growing economies over the next few years up to 2015, driven mainly by mining, agriculture, construction, as well as energy. Next. What are some of the key investment considerations? Let's go to the next slide. The first one is that Zambia is strategically located. If you look at the map in terms of where Zambia is, it's well connected on the eastern side for exports as well as imports, starting from Dar es Salaam, stretching all the way southwards to Durban. And on the western side, we have Walvis Bay, which is the best route to use if you are doing business with Western Europe, as well as with North America and South America. We have a relatively well-developed road network, as well as an existing rail system connecting those major ports. By air, Zambia has 3 international airports, a relatively well-organized road network, and interconnected rail both to the south as well as to the north through the Tazara rail system. Next. Second point that one needs to look at is in terms of the ease of doing business. Again, this is an area where anyone who's doing business wants to know how easy is it to set up in Zambia. The green essentially represents countries that are relatively easy to do business in. And if you see where Zambia is located here, it compares favorably with countries to the south, such as South Africa, Namibia, Botswana. Mauritius is not showing, but it falls in the same category. And the red shows the countries that are relatively more difficult, the most difficult to do business in. If you look at the World Bank Doing Business Index, Zambia is ranked 7th in Sub-Saharan Africa, 5th in SADC, and I think 84th in the world. I must mention here that what has happened recently is that the new government has put renewed interest in fast-tracking the implementation of the private sector development reform program, which I'll get to shortly, in order to address the remaining bottlenecks to doing business in Zambia, with the forecast that when the 10 indicators that are measured by the World Bank are addressed, Zambia should leapfrog probably into the top 50 preferred business destinations in the world. Next. This is a map produced by Ernst & Young. If you look at at your right-hand corner, on your x-axis, those are the countries with the lowest risk is measured on your far right, and your highest return is measured on your topmost right-hand corner. So ideally, the country, the quadrant you would want to be in, if you're looking at investing in a particular country, is quadrant number 4, which offers you low risk, as well as offers you a high reward. And Zambia is one of the few countries that fall in quadrant 4. And the countries that are marked in blue are the countries that have been marked by Ernst & Young as offering the greatest opportunity in terms of growing market opportunity. And you can see that out of the 17 countries, best countries measured in Africa, Zambia is among the 5 that are marked in blue in terms of market opportunity. Next slide. Again, economic growth, performance of institutions, good governance cannot prevail without a stable political and social environment, cannot prevail without democracy. The EIO Democracy Index ranks Zambia 7th overall in Africa, 71st globally. The Mo Ibrahim Index for African Governance ranks it 16 out of 43 African countries. If you look at our parliamentary numbers, they are relatively well spread between the ruling Patriotic Front and the opposition parties in terms of composition and representation in the lawmaking organ, which is Parliament. Next slide. Yes, when it comes to FDI, what do you consider as FDI? You can invest in various forms. On the right-hand side, you've got what is known as portfolio investment, which normally comes through investment in government bonds, treasury bills, and stocks. And then the right-hand side, you have investment that we term as FDI, which is essentially investment going into greenfield. If you're setting up a greenfield operation in mining, agriculture, in energy, housing, you name it. As well as if you're buying an existing operation in Zambia, or indeed investing in an existing operation in Zambia. That is what our primary interest is, because that normally represents long-term commitment in the form of capital to the country. Next slide. Like I was saying, if you look at our performance from 1994 on an FDI, in terms of actual FDI inflows, you look at the decade up to 2003, 2004, and then compare that with the period leading up to 2010, 2011, you find that actual FDI inflows have gone up 6 times. That has largely been driven. A number of reforms have been undertaken in the past: liberalization, privatization, removal of exchange controls, formation of different institutions. But what has had a significant impact is what is known as the Private Sector Development Reform Program, which, like I said, aims to address the bottlenecks that business associates in terms of doing business. And the new government has put renewed effort with a unit that is responsible, which hitherto was housed in the Ministry of Commerce, moving now to Cabinet Office, in order to give it cross-cutting powers across ministries to implement the necessary reforms to ease the doing of business in Zambia. So, like I was saying, we are confident that next time the doing business indexes are compiled, we should see a significant leap in the performance of Zambia. And I'm sure the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, when he speaks, he will probably talk a bit more, having been instrumental in the strengthening of the private sector development reform, leading to its eventual move to Cabinet Office. Next slide. This slide just shows the number of projects that we've been receiving. You can see that manufacturing has been dominating. This is up to March last year. But if you update that since 2007, you'll find that the number of has now gone up to about 600, because on an annual basis, we should be doing in manufacturing close to 100 or so projects. So this time probably the number is around 600. This is just in terms of absolute new projects setting up in the different sectors as an indication of investor confidence in the different areas. Next slide. This is just a slide which just shows again the FDI trends, the number of jobs created, as well as investment, as well as new projects that are setting up, shown by the continuous line. And the green are the number of jobs being created by FDI since 2003. And this report is compiled from Ernst & Young, it's independent. And capital investment on an annual basis is represented in the red, which again just gives an indication of the increasing trend over the last few years. 2011, I must mention that recorded a decline over 2010. And the main reason for that was an election year. And most of the investment for 2011, interestingly, came from existing investors, people already on the ground, the mining companies, Illovo Sugar, despite the negative reports by the likes of Action Aid and so on. It mainly came from the local investors. So this is potentially a good source of new investment in addition to new projects that we get from new interests such as missions such as this one. Next. Again, this just shows where the FDI has been going since 2003. As expected, almost 50% into the metal sector, followed by alternative and renewable energy, coal and natural gas. Natural gas, probably this will reflect more the exploration expenditure as well as other sectors. An indication of some of the major groups that are already in Zambia. They include the likes of Walmart, who bought the entity that owns the game stores, for those that have been to Zambia and all that, so they have exposure. They've got a plan to expand the existing retail outlets from 1 to about 13 over the next few years. You have Nestle, you have Huawei, Rabobank in Zambia National Commercial Bank, Vale have set to commission the new mine which is being set up with Africa Rainbow by September this year. Hitachi, the newest entry and the biggest investor from Japan, again showing renewed interest in Zambia as an investment destination by Japanese investors. Again, this slide here based on the private capital flows survey which is undertaken by the Zambia Development Agency in conjunction with the Central Bank, the Bank of Zambia. It just gives an indication of the actual FDI sources for 2011, including the first quarter of 2012. You can see that Canada was the leading FDI supplier, followed by China, the United Kingdom, Australia, and so on. South Africa showed a net outflow in that year, basically representing movement of capital between parent and subsidiaries in the year under consideration. Mauritius is an emerging power as well, because I think they've moved now to the service and knowledge industry sector, and most of the secondary industries that have interest in Mauritius are now finding a home in countries like Zambia and other sub-Saharan Africa. This again just shows the type of return on equity that one would make if you had to invest in Zambia based on actual performance of the measured companies. The leading sector, as expected, was wholesale and retail trade, closely followed by manufacturing at 33.8%. And the overall return on equity that you'd expect to get in Zambia is about 14%. And I'm sure investing in Western Europe today, you'll be likely to get anywhere near 1% ROE. Next. Some of the incentives available if you're investing include tax reduction if you're in a priority sector, location support through reduced rentals in the North Facility Economic Zones, support for the building of infrastructure if you're setting up in the 2M phases, as well as assistance from ZDA in terms of getting approvals, identification of local partners, and other locational support that one may need. Next slide. Again, to mention here why these sectors, which are shown: agriculture, which the minister will be talking about, mining, tourism, infrastructure and energy. Under the new government, there is what is known as the Job Creation and Industrialization Strategy paper. And under that, if you follow the budget presentation for 2013, that is basically was an extract of this strategy paper, which aims to speed up. Government basically recognizes that government won't create employment, but its actions follow the course. So through the actions of government, should be able to attract investment in the selected sectors, and as a consequence of that, be able to create the necessary employment. These are known as the growth sectors in the medium term, and are the areas that government is focusing on, both from an investment promotion, as well as from providing what is known as trade enabling infrastructure, improvement of movement across borders, investment in roads, upgrade of road and rail and ports, as well as ICT, and more importantly, investment in education and medical facilities. Again, a few more indicators on why Zambia is a good investment destination. We all know about the successful raise of the Eurobond with the help of Barclays Bank. And 2012, last year, the UN South Global Leadership Award was awarded to our President, His Excellency Mr. Sata, for his contribution to social and economic development of Zambia and proven record in fighting corruption. Why is fighting corruption important from a business perspective? It does push up the cost of doing business. It raises uncertainty in terms of getting approvals for business. And the countries that have a low corruption index generally tend to attract more investment. Zambia is also a signatory of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, in order to show that, which shows that we are complying with the minimum regulations for transparency that should govern the extraction industry. This chart is pulled out from Ernst & Young report again. On your left-hand side corner, you've got the outlook based on natural resources, labor, market size, infrastructure, bureaucracy, corruption, and the overall outlook for investment. The green basically shows that it's very attractive. So for example, if you look at natural resources, through 2012, 2017, that will remain very, very attractive. Labor prospects remain attractive, that is in terms of skills and cost. Market size, it remains average, but again, this is a function of, if you factor in your COMESA and SADC, probably would change the 2017 yellow to green. Infrastructure, if you thought it's on average in terms of outlook, if you take into account the ongoing Link 8000 over the next 5 years, which aims to do 8,000 kilometers of bituminous roads, that should really change to green as well, including the projects that are ongoing in the energy sector. Reduced bureaucracy, the focus remains attractive. Corruption and political environment, again, that remains attractive because of the ongoing fight against corruption. And the overall outlook for FDI at the bottom there for 2017 remains attractive, which means an independent report, which means from an investor perspective, it's coming from independent sources, not from a government agency like ours. If we say the outlook is positive, we say yes, you are government employees, but this is an independent report by a reputable international firm, Ernst & Young. Next. Some of the major players that are already in Zambia, you can see for yourself, I won't go through them. Again, the question you'll be asking, yes, you're doing all those things, but what are the ongoing projects? These are some of the leading investors that we have with projects in the pipeline, other expansion, greenfield, diversification, and so on. Next. For these are some of the support services that you'll be able to get from Zambia Development Agency in terms of locational support if you're setting up in Zambia for both foreign as well as local investors. Next. Again, question will be asked, What are the roles of the ministries? Ministry of Commerce is responsible for formulating investment policies. The other ministries, sector ministries, they also formulate sector policies, as well as play a hand-holding role in developing investor relations, as well as helping investors establish their businesses. And ZDA plays a coordination role, working in between the Ministry of Commerce as well as sector ministries to ensure that any project that comes up, regardless of the sector, is implemented up to completion. Again, in the way we work, we have a number of partners around the world who we work with. Probably we need to update this slide and now add with the permission of Chairman Lam, add the Business Council for Africa as one of the partners that we cooperate with at the global level. Next. Again, the 10 basic reasons why one should invest in Zambia, which I've covered in a way in my presentation. Next. And that's a conclusion. That's the contact details for Zambia Development Agency, our website, and the email, where you can reach us or any of the divisions that we have in exports, SMEs, as well as investment support. I thank you very much.
Presentation that has just been made by Henry Chikwende, the Director General of Zambia Development Agency. Let me just say that I take it as my own presentation, and some of you might know that 27 days ago I was Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, moved over to agriculture and learning to be a farmer. Unfortunately for London, I had to wear a suit because I'm told you are in the city, but when you come back home, I will be wearing khakis. Let me also acknowledge our colleagues and partners that have been very instrumental in helping us to be here. In particular, I'm thinking of our colleagues at Barclays, and Xavier Chiuya is here, and well as chairman of the Business Council for Africa. Yes. Last year I was doing business with the Commonwealth Business Council, so there are also many partners, and yes, and we should update that and put down all these good partners that are helping us to be here. Having moved to Ministry of Agriculture, my job was basically to look at what is taking place and to see how we can move forward in terms of investment in this area. It has already been shown in this presentation. It's an area which we consider very important. And what are we seeking to do? We are seeking to be the food basket. This is not bread basket, because back home we eat sweet potatoes and other foods, and if we have just eaten bread, we have not eaten food, we have eaten just a snack. So food means meal, a full meal, a mess meal. And so this is what we're seeking to do, taking advantage of what Andrew has just said. We're part of the SADC area, we're also part of the COMESA area. And we're working to bring these groups together, including the East African community. Yes, sure. We are sort of taking these three groupings, which includes the East African community. And this East African community, some members are members of SADC, others are also members of COMESA. So in a way, they are kind of members of all these groups. And the East African community includes Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, and Rwanda. So those five make up the East African community. So these three groups, SADC, East African community, and COMESA, which includes some of the members, constitute now the tripartite. And the total population of this group in terms of consumers is about 600 million people. It also involves 26 countries, ranging from Cape in the south, right through to Cairo in the north. And this, I suppose, is Cecil Rhodes' dream of Cape to Cairo. So what we're looking at from our perspective as a Minister of Agriculture is to see what role we can play as a food basket. Why? Because we are land linked with 8 neighbors, and also COMESA is actually headquartered in Zambia. And we believe that the advantages, the comparative advantages that Andrew has talked about, the issue of availability of water, fresh water, a lot of lakes, as well as land. 752,000 square kilometers is our landmass. On the picture, it looks small, but quite frankly, it is a long way. My own home village is some 1,500 kilometers away from this town. So before I travel, I have to prepare myself for a stopover in my journey. So that's how the size of Zambia is. So for the moment, we'll run this video. It's a short video of 10 minutes, and then we shall take you through the actual steps of what are the initiatives we're making, what are we seeking to achieve. And if I overlook anything, I've got members of staff. Maybe you could be just upstanding so that they can be able to see you. Members of staff from the ministry come. Thanks, right? Those three members of staff from my ministry are helping me with this particular presentation. But also the fact that I'm a learner in the ministry, there are a lot of things that they know that I don't know, and so they are available to be able to assist you. On the left is the gentleman that is responsible for the farm blocks. In the middle is another member of staff that is responsible for the planning side, and then on the right, on your right is my assistant and also economist in the ministry. So we'll run this for now. I don't know if your sound is okay. Okay, and then we can work backwards. Okay. So we're seeking to be the food basket of Africa. Food basket is a whole range, not just bread. Now let me just mention to you that something that is not here is a graph that shows where we were only in 2002. In 2002, we were purchasing only 54,000 metric tons of local grain, maize. And it's not here, so I'll just give this explanation, and then we can take that from there. So what I've done is to take the presentation and give you a profile of Zambia. The bulk of it has already been covered by Andrew, so I won't take too long. How we intend feeding the nation, how agriculture is contributing to that, and then the issue of the crop production that we are undertaking, how we want to diversify this crop base, and also share with you the water resources that we have. Our thrust, though, is on the farm blocks. We are seeking to do this development, the farming development, through farm blocks in each of our 10 provinces. And some of them do not have this because we've just created a 10th province and within the current government. And so that one does not have a farm block yet, but we are intending to do that. Okay, so let's just go into it a little bit more. The population was already, and other details were given by Andrew. The area is about just over 750,000 square kilometers, population 13.1. There's a feature here which I think is very important for us to recognize, that Zambia, although very, very urban, still has a 64% population in the rural areas. And the bulk of those people are involved in small-scale farming. So that is an important component. And 45% of that is our female labor force. Administration is in 10 provinces, as I've mentioned to you. Literacy level, 70% according to the 2010 census. Climate is tropical, definitely much better than this. And so we want to invite you to come and join us in this climate. Very, very nice climate. And I say to myself, God must have paused and thought through everything else and said, what shall I give to these children? And he gave us fantastic weather. And as though that was not enough, he gave us also 40% of the water resource in the Southern African subcontinent. That's a major resource, one for hydropower, but as well as for irrigation. And since it's fresh water, we don't have to treat it in terms of removing any salts in it, so we're quite happy about that. And of course, the temperature ranges between 13 degrees centigrade of the minimum, and then goes on to 34, depending on the season. And in distinct seasons, we do have our springtime, and it changes accordingly. So we also have rainfall, which ranges between 600 millimeters to, sometimes it does exceed our norms, but generally speaking, up to 1,400 millimeters in terms of rainfall. Just go back a little bit, I'll just finish. And then a substantial part of our country is woodlands, 353,000 square kilometers, but also a lot of this is game parks and game management areas, 17 million hectares of management area. 43.7% million hectares, which is 58% of the country, is arable land. On the western side, we do have quite a lot of sand as we go towards Namibia into the Caprivi Strip. That's a challenge in terms of growth, but that means the specific crops would have to be grown there. But out of this land, we want to use 10.5 million hectares. So 14% only has been used. So this is what gives you the potential that we have as a country. Hence, our trust towards these funding blocks. Let's go to the next slide. Well, a lot of this I think I've already covered. There's another side, because of the water resource, we only have 6% under irrigation, which gives us tremendous opportunities for growth, growing crops beyond. We are self-sufficient in maize, which is our staple food at the moment. And maybe I would have to just mention here the point I was making earlier, that in 2002 to 2003 season, our Food Reserve Agency, which is responsible for storing grain for the seasons, purchased only 54,000 metric tons. 54,000. As of 2010 to 2011, our production had shot up to 3.2 million metric tons. Last year, it dropped a bit to 2.8 million metric tons. We are the only country in Southern Africa at the moment that has got grain. So we're supplying to Zimbabwe, we're supplying to Tanzania, we're supplying to Congo, we're supplying to Malawi, we're supplying to Tanzania. We're assisting our neighbors because the president basically has said he will not want to see anyone die in Africa for lack of food if we have the food. And so long as we're sufficient, and our stocks, we normally carry about 500,000 metric tons that we carry forward each year to the season. So that is an important component. And please just know that more than 6% of the Zambian population is engaged in agriculture. That makes agriculture our medicine. That's important for us. And we do have large-scale production as well. We're also self-sufficient in wheat, but it's grown by 5 farmers in the country. And we want to increase that. So we have got mini central pivot systems that we'd like to introduce in order to allow for the small-scale farmers to participate in this, because it is important that our people do participate. Most of the commercial farmers will be foreigners and also foreign investors. And so this is why we want to change and diversify also into high-value crops to make sure that we can be able to supply the region, but also beyond. Let's go to the next slide. So our mission statement is on job creation is, as a government, we have decided we will make sure that our people have got employment. Our population has got a very interesting profile. We have a very young country. 84% of our population are young people below the age of 35. Why 35? Because our youth is somebody who is between the age of 16 and 35. And that is half of that population, that 84%. And that represents a number of 5 million people. For us, we don't want an Arab Spring. We want to deal with the problem before it arises. So we're having to address that issue in order to ensure that the young people can have these opportunities. So our target in terms of job creation is the Ministry of Agriculture, in fact, is the largest provider of employment. 500,000 jobs are to be created in the Ministry of Agriculture over the next 5 years. And that means on average 100,000 jobs every year. That's a total. And because of that, we are having to find alternatives, ways in which we can be able to promote that. And this is some of what I'll share with you. But over and about that, we're also looking at creating enclaves, special enclaves for instance, livestock, as well as specific crops to allow us diversification in the process. And so that's what you see as our mission statement over there. And so we are a major contributor to the gross domestic product. Next. So the ministry also has the training and research institutions in all the provinces, depending on what you have. They are not perfect, they are not world-class always, but we think that what we have is sufficient to get started from, and that we can build on that. And those that are coming to join us, we expect that you will contribute towards this process. Extension services as well as research, providing us with, for example, the seed companies have done extremely well. The seed companies have established research institutions. They're able to supply not only to the region, to our own country, but also to the entire region. They are providing seeds to the entire region and tailored, obviously, to the environment in which they are, both at home as well as in the individual countries. So we think that this is a great success. We can export this assignment as well. So training and extension services are critical. This is good. And the way we've demarcated the country is that it has got 3 distinct rainfall patterns, and this determines what crops you can grow. The area that is in the pinkish area northern part of the country, that drains mostly to the west and leading into the Congo Basin, and then on to the Atlantic Ocean. On the eastern side, starting from the northwest, but it makes a curve towards the south, towards the west, and then to the south, and then to the southeast. It drains now towards Malawi and into Mozambique, the Zambezi Basin, it drains in down into the Indian Ocean. That's how that system works. So the peak area is normally very, little rain, and then it goes into the second, the region number 2, which is rainfall, which is about 800 up to about 1,000. That's the green area, deep green area, okay, right across the country. And the yellow area is got the highest rainfall. It's going towards the equator and towards the Congo Basin, and that obviously influences the rainfall pattern. So that normally gets rainfall between 800, above 1,000 and onwards. And depending on the area in which you are, the soils are also different. And also the amount of water is determined by the amount of rainfall we have. So one of our assignments in these farming blocks, and generally, is to accumulate water, to harvest water, so that we can have them in weirs and dams to make sure that we can be able to provide irrigation. That's the way this addresses us. Now, the maize production I was just mentioning, we've split this into 10 provinces, and you will see that in the southern province has been traditionally our major granary for the country. And that's why you see this sharp yellow line right towards the right-hand side. However, as of 2010, we had a change of this scenario. Now we put Eastern Province providing the biggest number, quantities of grain. Because of this, there are opportunities. Opportunities are the southern region used to provide the most maize, and therefore it has got most storage capacity. But the eastern does not have as much storage. The northern and central do not have as much storage. And therefore there's an business opportunity for storage capacity to be built. And you might wish just to take note of that. Let's go to the next slide. Again, the 10-year trend in national maize production, you can quite clearly see there must be something we're doing right, because it's growing up to more than 3 million metric tons. And this is from 2002 to 2003, right up to 2011 and 2012. Our target last year was disrupted because of glitches that we had in the distribution of inputs to small-scale farmers. And so this year we're expecting a lower yield. We're expecting about 2 million metric tons. And traditionally, 50% is retained for household security. And then the other half is available now for trading. So we expect that 1 million will be purchased this year. And therefore we need to carry over some stocks. Our annual consumption is about 1,200,000 metric tons. So we expect that we carry over at least 200 mix. Okay, again, I just decided to give you a slide. There's another major crop that we have. We haven't shown wheat, but we've shown sugar. I think this the company Ilovo is partly owned by British Sugar. So it might be of interest to those of you who might want to talk to Ilovo and British Sugar, that we've done quite well. And most of this is done through their own production, but they've also combined it with outgrower schemes. And those of you who want to invest in our country, we want to encourage you to do that. We want you to combine your own production with that of the outgrower, so that some of the best practices can also be imparted to the group that is outside the world. So access roads has also been done around the farms, and 3 bridges have been constructed across the rivers that are in that area. As I said, these are huge tracts of land. These are huge tracts of land. Another one that is important for us is what we call the Tazara corridor. All the way going up to Tanzania into Botswana is another area which is not included in this law. Let's go to the next one. And these are just some of the pictures that we took for electrification and the roads and the bridges that have been constructed. Go to the next one. That's part of the construction of the roads, and the bridges here have been completed, and we are able to use those. Go to the next one. This is the bulk water, the dams that have been created. This is to ensure that we can be able to irrigate as well as supply water to the communities that will be created within the areas. So this is another farm block. It's called Luea farm block. This is in Wakula province on the northwestern side. Mr. Lori, I think this farm you know where is up in Wakula.
Yes.
It's a master plan for the backbone has been completed. 10,000 hectares. Co-venture is also being demarcated at the moment. And this is where we expect that those of you who are interested can come and do a PPP with us. And we have already identified some of the works that need to be done. We can develop this further. We can speed up the process if we put additional capital to be able to do this. Let's go to the next one. So these are the other farms. I've shown you 2, and these are the other farms, farm blocks that we have. Again, there's another slide there after this. These are the different locations which we've already identified from the map that I showed you. Let's go to the next one. And so that's the 8 plus the 2 that I showed you, Nansanga and Lueno. But we haven't also shown you the Tazara corridor, which is running along the Tazara rail line, very similar to what is happening in Mozambique. Let's go on to this one. So why are there investment opportunities? Well, let me explain a little bit about land tenure in our country. None of us can own land. We think that that's God's gift to all of us. You cannot buy land. You can lease land. Up to 199 years, you can lease land. So please don't come up there and say, I want to buy land. You cannot buy land. I cannot buy land. However, a separate individual who is a foreigner cannot lease that land. What they can do is buy property. What they can also do is, through their company, they can obtain the leasing of the land. I'll repeat that. I, as an individual, Zambian or foreigner, cannot buy land. I can lease land up to 99 years as a Zambian. The foreigner cannot lease land as an individual, but their companies can lease land. Predominantly 25 years renewable. And the idea is to see that they're serious, they want to develop this land. We don't want people buying land and speculating. That we don't want. We would like them to buy land and use it so that we can be able to achieve the objectives that we have, the overall objectives that we have. And so that's what we're doing out here. So here again, you see lease of land, 10 years, 25 years, which is renewable, which is offered to prospective investors. And the general concept here is that you can come in, use this land, and after you've improved it, you are able to get crops from it, it can be renewed for you, but we would not want to tie future generations who may want to have a different approach, depending on the economic circumstances there. If we tie up for 99 years, it will be very difficult. It means 2 generations at least, that would have to be involved. However, what we have got is within the Constitution, the security of tenure. Nobody can annex your property. In the Constitution, as well as the Investment Act, you cannot do that. The Zambia government cannot just wake up one morning and say, we are nationalizing. That's enshrined in the Constitution, is enshrined in the subsidiary legislation that is constituted Zambia Development Agency. Next slide. As I mentioned before, we want to make sure that all these farm blocks take into account the people that are living around those farm blocks, and we want them to benefit. Hence, we are encouraging outgrower schemes, whereas the core business promoter would be involved in developing their own farms. We would like them to also bring the smaller farms on board, and also encourage others to come on board with them for value addition. Okay, so we're encouraging this at all levels, and we're working in collaboration with the Ministry of Home State and Ministry. This, therefore, will create the linkage between farming, agriculture, as well as other industries, and that gives additional opportunities for those of you who might be here. Let's go on to this one. And let me conclude by saying that globally land suitable for farming is in short supply, we know that. Also land with fresh water resources nearby is scarce, we know that. If therefore you have both good arable land and readily available water, you have got a double view. But much more than that, we must regard it as a precious gem. Everybody knows that. We're having inquiries from the Middle East, we're having inquiries from the Far East, we're having inquiries from the United States at the moment to see if people can set up in here. And I'm afraid to say that although Britain has been our colonial masters in the past, they have been very slow in waking up to the reality. And I want to tell you, you've been very, very slow. The Americans are always self-contented. They've also woken up to a new dimension, that it's not enough to just have self-sufficient United States. The world has become global, we all need each other, and this is why we are reaching out to the world. And the United Kingdom, we share the language, we share the law, we share the taxation system, we share the education system, and quite frankly, you should have no difficulty, because you can hear what I'm saying to you, can't you? I'm able to communicate to you without an interpreter. And as though that was not enough, I was in Birmingham when I trained as a certified accountant in 71 to 74. So we understand also the accounting system is exactly the same as you have here. So what could be better than that? But you've been slow in responding. You've been very slow in responding. So wake up. Wake up. Wake up. All right, and catch up with everybody else. Because we've got this scarce resource, that everybody is after, we need to use it carefully and sustainably in the long term. We are also pursuing proactive policies as a government. I think this is an ideal time for you to come along. If you miss your opportunity, don't say, I haven't told you. Because I told you. Okay? I think it's a ideal chance for you to come and invest in Zambia. So Zambia offers all this combination: good quality, good policies, good governance, which my colleague already talked about, plenty of fresh water, good sunshine, and we also think that this is an ideal opportunity that we can be able to share with the rest of the world. That's our offer to the rest of the world. This is what Zambia offers you. Thank you very much. Are you ready for video?
Very short presentation, just 3 slides. If you could just switch to the next one. So the overall story is pretty positive with just a few significant caveats. Zambia has grown incredibly rapidly over the past decade. It's outperformed the global economy by far, but also the region's 3 largest economies, South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria. And the other positive aspect of the story is that this growth has not been driven purely by commodities. If you look at the second graph, you'll see that mining's contribution to growth has not been particularly significant. It's been quite erratic as well. It's purely driven it, and it's been services and construction. So that's the good news. The 2 caveats are that growth has been from a low base. So GDP per capita and purchasing power parity is slightly below Nigeria and Kenya, well below South Africa. And agriculture and manufacturing haven't been driving growth either. And so the presentations we've heard today from Mr. Chikwende and Singh are incredibly promising because they suggest that over the next 5 years we can see agriculture playing a much bigger role in driving growth. The economy's fundamentals are also incredibly strong. Inflation has come down from double digits a decade ago to about 7% and is likely to stay at that level in the next 5 years. Public debt as a share of GDP came down dramatically in 2005 when Zambia secured debt relief. And even though it has grown significantly since then, it's been outpaced by GDP. So overall, we've got quite modest public debt to GDP ratio. So Mr. Chikwende, you were right that Zambia does have a lot of capacity to take on additional debt, specifically to invest in infrastructure. And this is the one that I'll focus on a little more, since we've heard a lot of great things about Zambia. All of them true. It is an incredibly attractive investment destination, but there are some things to watch out for. The first is copper dependence. So even though mining hasn't been driving growth, copper accounts for over 80% of exports. And what that means is that the economy is very vulnerable to any commodity price volatility. And with the global economy looking shaky, this is a particular concern at the moment. And what we've seen in the past is that when copper prices drop, the exchange rate weakens dramatically, the cost of imported inputs shoots up, inflation shoots up, putting a lot of pressure on the macroeconomy. And the government has talked a lot about diversifying the export basket. This hasn't happened yet, but again, with promotional agro-processing, we could see this diversification taking place. So something to watch out for is potential investors. The second one, and the one that really concerns us, is policy risk. And we recognize that the current government came into power on a mandate of bringing down inequality, bringing down unemployment, boosting revenue mobilization from the mining sector. And so certain changes were to be expected, such as the doubling of royalties and copper. That's completely fair enough. But there are certain other things. So for example, the Bank of Zambia has recently been given the authority to monitor and regulate trade flows and capital flows. And we don't really have an indication of how far the Bank of Zambia is going to take these powers, how extensive these controls going to be. And interestingly, in Mr. Chikwende's presentation, point number 7 on why should you invest in Zambia was no limits on the repatriation of profits. So, even if such limits are to be introduced, they can play an important role in promoting development and growth. But I guess as potential investors, you want to know, well, what are we in for? How extensive are these controls going to be? So greater clarity on that would, I think, be required. The second thing is that certain changes have been noticed which could introduce scope of foreign investment in the economy. Something else to watch out for, because you want more clarity on that before going into Zambia. And the other thing that's not up there is the government has been quite willing to use, to directly intervene in the economy to meet its goals. So we've seen controls on, we've seen caps on the lending rates that commercial banks can charge. We've seen, cap on the price of maize. Again, this is something that would be great to get better clarity on, because it can be a major source of instability and uncertainty for businesses. And finally, fiscal macroeconomic performance has been great, but we do have some concerns on here as well. So the government has recently approved pay increases for civil servants ranging from 4% for the highest paid to 200% for the lowest paid. And the 200% increases are aimed at bringing the lowest paid civil servants above the kind of basic needs basket, so they can afford the basic kind of basket of goods. Again, completely fair enough. But this is the increases further on are going to put a lot of pressure on the public finances. We could see the deficit going up to 7% of GDP. And the whole thing is Zambia has just taken on this Eurobond, and the Eurobond is incredible. It was impressive. It was massively oversubscribed. The yields on the bond were lower than what Spain was paying at the time. It was a huge success story. But what's sadly concerning now is that money going to be used to pay for wages and recurrent spending, or is it really going to go towards investment in infrastructure? So that's something else to watch out for. The next point, it's quite generic. It's an issue across much of sub-Saharan Africa. There are infrastructure skills. Zambia is doing pretty well. Power supply is expected to grow. Is expected to double over the next 5 years. Skills, again, something that it would be great to hear what the government strategy is to address the skills deficit. Which brings us to the last point, which is the need for industrialization. And again, Zambia seems to be completely on the right track here, because you need to first boost productivity in agriculture in order to then move into manufacturing. But over the longer term, this is something that's going to have to transpire in order for recent growth rates to be sustained. No economy in the world has managed to achieve particularly high levels of income without going through this process of industrialization. And it'll be interesting to watch when and how Zambia manages to meet that challenge from the bank funds. But yeah, overall the story is pretty positive. Just a few things to watch out for.
That was a very powerful and interesting overview. We've got a little behind the time today for all sorts of reasons. So before we get to the panel questions and answers, we've got two more short presentations. John Rabb from Zambia is going to give us a little bit of his background. I'm not going to tell you anything about John because we'll save time that way. But John, would you like just to sort of say that, and then we'll go on from there.
Pleasure. Honourable Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Mopshishinga, the Honourable Acting High Commissioner, other ministers, and Mr. Andrew Chipenwa, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to talk very briefly about my company that I represent, which is Zambia, and I think that what I'd like to leave you with is a feel of what it's actually like to be invested and to be active in Zambia. Now, our company started there in 1994. It was started by two individuals. They had a dream, they had a vision, they wanted to be in the meat industry, they had no money, they operated out of a Land Rover, and they opened one outlet, and through that outlet they started their dream. And it's quite interesting, we've heard from the Minister today, the extent to which the government is prepared to go to promote industry. Well, that help was there back in 1994 because that one outlet coincidentally happened to belong to a Mr. Michael Sata, and he rented the outlet to these two young men. And today, Mr. Sata is His Excellency, the Honourable President of the State of Zambia. So our association with the current government indirectly goes back a long time. So from that one outlet, today we have 120 outlets. The company Zambia has an annual turnover of $265 million US. We produce net profits of $12 million US. We are listed on both the Lusaka and the London AIM stock exchanges, and we have a market capitalization of over $200 million. So this is a success story which we're very proud of. But really, the success story is equally the success story of Zambia as a country. Because Zambia has been a very good place to do business. You've heard from the previous speakers, enlightened government policies, fiscal discipline, stable economic and parliamentary democracy, and encouragement of free enterprise. And all this has resulted in the growing economy that you've heard about from previous speakers. The direct impact upon our company and why we've been able to grow has been twofold. Firstly, governments successively have recognized the need for growth and have encouraged us, have introduced understanding taxation policies, and the result of it has been the growth in a strong consumer market. The need for food is high on the priority list and leading to strong growth in all sectors of the retail food market. Also, as you have heard, there are major regional opportunities, particularly in Zimbabwe. But what have been our challenges? Our main challenges have been those associated with a growing emerging economy. Infrastructure that has struggled to keep pace with the growth. We've had problems over the years with roads, with electricity, with our rail system. And you've heard from the authoritative sources that these issues are being addressed, and we are very comfortable and confident that that situation will improve in the future. The other major problem and challenge that we faced, surprisingly, was a threat, but also became an opportunity. That was the lack of availability of products, goods, and services for business growth. In an emerging economy, there was very few facilities available. Something, for example, as simple as moving your goods from point of production to your stores. You need a transport system. There wasn't one in Zambia. So we had to embark upon entering into a transport market, and today we have our own established fleet of transport. We are a vertically driven, integrated business model. That wasn't from choice. That arose from circumstance. When we expanded our beef operation, we went into poultry, we wanted to supply this basket of merchandise to our customers. Availability of that supply was not readily there. So we went into production of poultry. Poultry needs stock feed. There wasn't a stock feed market, so we went into stock feed. Stock feed requires a large quantity of soya growth. That was not available, so we went into production of soya, and we are in the soya production. That led to an opportunity in the edible oils sphere, where we crush and we're now able to retail edible oils. So these are all problems, but those are problems that create major opportunities. And one of the areas where there is a bottleneck that does emerge in businesses such as ours is that there is a high demand on capital for expansion and expenditure, and we require to produce very disciplined growth. But these are common business problems, these are manageable problems, and these are problems, if approached in the right way, are able to be converted into opportunities. And through that, we have made judicious investment in certain production areas, and today we produce we grow 15,000 hectares of summer crops, 8,000 hectares of irrigated winter crops. We are following very closely along the lines that the Minister has outlined of utilizing the wonderful resources that there are in the country, and we are very optimistic that this is going to lead to very strong growth in the future. Now, we also realize that as the economy grows, the priorities of business and government may not always be the same. And we respect and understand that these are challenges that business face. We have a very good existing dialogue between business and government, and we believe that this dialogue is critical for successful operations within the country, and we seek to have a closer dialogue into the future. And in this regard, I'd like to pledge to the Minister that we will do everything in our power to assist in this process that you have outlined, which we find exciting and challenging, and we would very much welcome an even closer dialogue than the one that we value that exists at present. So where do we see big opportunities for business like ourselves? I think it's in this private-public partnership between large business and small-scale farmers. It's interesting to note that we slaughter over 20,000 head of cattle currently per year for our requirements in our stores. Of that, over 60% of the supply comes from small-scale farmers. In our pork industry, we slaughter over 6,000 head of pigs every year. 80% of those come from small-scale farmers. We require for our stock feed and oil expression operation 100,000 tons of soya. We produce 40,000 tons ourselves within our environment, so we require another 60,000 tons. So here are major opportunities for large-scale, small-scale cooperation, and we are encouraging and active with small-scale farmers to produce soya for our requirements. And there are many things that large-scale business can do. They can underwrite prices, they can provide advanced supplies of infrastructure such as fertilizer, and we see this as a big opportunity and a big role into the future. We have a small pilot palm plant operation in the Mbika district, and here is another example of where government and private enterprise cooperation can lead to something very major. We've put in the infrastructure there, we've revitalized an area that previously had very little employment opportunity. Government, on the other hand, has improved the road system, has given great incentives there, and we can see into the future a very, very major opportunity for the small-scale farmers on an outgrower basis to produce palm, which is very doable and is what happens in other parts of the world, and this will drive this successful large business, small outgrower farmers operation. So we are very optimistic and very positive of the future of Zambia. We are very encouraged by the moves that are being taken by the government, and to anybody who is thinking of entering into that market, I think that if you enter in with a specific mindset, a mindset of can do, not a mindset of problems, there is a very, very strong future there. And I would commend to any company or individual who is considering Zambia to do more than just consider it, to act, move, and I'm sure that there are many other success stories in the pipeline, such as Zambia, that in 20 years' time can look back and say, this was the start, look where we are today, and it's been a wonderful ride between private enterprise and government, and an example of what can be done in an emerging country such as Zambia. Thank you.
So our last presenter is Marku Vitanan, who is going to talk about the telecommunications side of investment in Zambia. We've heard about the agricultural side, now is the telecommunications. We're very lucky because he was held up at Gatwick Airport this morning, so that he's here at all is rather lucky for us. Thank you, Vitanan.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I actually was held at Helsinki Airport where the flight was delayed for 2 hours. And I needed to run here, but I made it in time. Thanks to the late schedule we were on. But anyway, I think I was invited here to make a presentation on small Finnish telecom consultants' adventures in Zambia. And I have a presentation, if I can get the slides. But my name is Markku Virtanen. I'm in transition to move to a company named Syrku, which is helping small and medium-sized enterprises to go Africa. And on the other hand, we import beef and cheese from Africa to Finland. And many more things to come. This is my previous employer, Omnitele, which is a telecom consultant. Can you put the next one? Out from Finland. The company was founded back in '88 when I joined the company, and we planned and rolled out and happened to launch also the first commercial GSM in the world back in 1991. We learned early on that what we do in Finland, thanks to the Nokia cluster, the lessons can be easily taken to other parts of the world. And the concept has been very successful. We have done about, or Omnitele has done about 1,000 projects in over 80 countries. Can you put the next one? Go back. As done in Africa since 2007 when I started the business development for the company. The green dots basically mean that we have met and made proposals and so on, started business development in those countries. Blue ones are where we have completed some projects. We mainly do network optimization, network planning, improving the networks. Can we put the next one? And the major challenge African operators are facing in very short time actually is the huge increase of data usage. You get sea cables, you get capacity, it's going to be there. But now the problem is that the operators are not capable or willing, I don't want to say which one, to invest on the capacity. And eventually what is going to happen is that the networks will be overloaded, the quality of service will go down, and the regulators in those countries are not capable of controlling. They have certain KPIs, like call drop rates, so on and so forth, voice quality, which they need to meet. Their license terms tell that they need to meet this one, but the regulator has no means to actually check that they are meeting those requirements. That's where we have been helping them, and we have been working with Sigta, for example, to be able to do their job. Can you put the next one? Now, in Zambia, the environment is like this. There are 3 operators currently on mobile side. There are Airtel and MTN, which are big groups. Their decision making is not in Zambia, it's outside Zambia. If company like us, for example, want to do something there, we have to go either to Dubai or we have to go to a jobber to put the tender in and get it. It's a very complicated case. It's doable but complicated. Zambia is not their first priority when it comes to expansion and so on and so forth. So in my opinion, everything comes a little bit late to Zambia. Then Zamtel is an interesting story. I met them first time in 2006. It was a government-owned company. Then it was bought by Libyans, and then that was a little bit unfortunate episode. And now it's back to government. Their network has been outsourced to Huawei and ZTE. And my experience says that everything is nice in the beginning, but after a few years there are issues. And we, Omnitele, just waits for the issues. Sigta, they are very willing to learn. They want to work, they want to learn. They currently have limited resources, limited capabilities, limited tools. But they are getting there, it will take some time. Next slide, please. And then my last slide is here. So my personal feeling about Zambia is that I've been there maybe 10, 15 times. So the access, at least for a Finn, is relatively easy. There is no visa hassle, no this and that. You just go there, you queue, you pay $50 and you are in. and that's, in my opinion, easy access. Also, the number of flights to Lusaka is increasing. Even KLM has started now a flight from Amsterdam. Goes via Harare, but anyway, it's kind of direct flight. The hotel capacity, at least in Lusaka, is a little bit limited, and that means occasionally when there are conferences and whatever, the prices are relatively high for the rooms. But still, in my opinion, compared to many other countries, everything works. I mean, I waited at Gatwick today longer than I waited in Lusaka. and then the mobile telecom players in Zambia, excluding Airtel, which is, in my opinion, is a little bit arrogant. They are very easy to approach. They want to learn, they want to discuss. The purchasing process is well defined, and in my opinion, it's transparent, which in some African countries, it's not the case. Meetings usually happen on time. Exceptions happen, but that's life. I mean, most of the times, the meeting starts actually when it should start. Decision-making process is a bit slow. The decision comes, but it may take time. And then, good for telecom operators, the networks actually need, today they need improvement, tomorrow they need even more improvement. Because the growth is huge, and I don't see the operators, as I said, willing or capable to invest as much as needed to the improvement. So that's basically my opinion, a small telecom operator's view how Zambia is doing. Thank you very much.
Can I now invite our panelists to come to the table? I'm afraid, because of the time situation, we're going to have to restrict ourselves to 2 or 3 questions, above which I'm very interested in, particularly the leasehold interest in Zambian agricultural property, Minister. My question would be not so much on Zambia, but why is it that you haven't been able to persuade your colleagues on the other side of the dam to do anything along the same lines, which seems to be eminently sensible?
Can I just say that I'm a minister of government of Zambia rather than Zimbabwe, so I'm not able to answer that question quite frankly. But having said that, I think it's on a general note, it's important for us to understand where the challenges are coming from. These have got historical, shall we say, connotations. How these countries were colonized and the conditions that were obtaining then. Zambia was in a slightly, then Northern Rhodesia was in a slightly different situation. It was a protectorate, right? In other places, it wasn't quite the case. If you take South Africa and even Rhodesia, then it was not quite the same. And you also have a situation where the manner in which the independence or the changes of government took place was completely different. In the case of Zimbabwe, there was a war. There was a war that took place in order for the liberation to occur, and that does leave bitter sentiments, and people start to feel we have obtained this at high cost. Same with South Africa. In fact, I would say that it's been very good that there hasn't been as much challenge in the South African situation. Now I'm talking as a citizen of the world rather than as a minister of the Zambian government. I was in South Africa on the day of the Soweto uprising. On the 16th of June, 1976, when the children were killed in Soweto. And when that takes place, it does leave a bitter taste. And if you look at how the land was distributed between the races, between the white population as well as the local population, it was such that it was a clear demarcation. And this is the fear that one has even to this day. Whenever anything is done on racial lines, it is a recipe for difficulties in the long term. And this is why for us, being a multiracial country, and we call one Zambia, one nation, and we have, by the way, our vice president is white. his parents come, they were Scottish, and he's the vice president of our country. And maybe we're in a very unique position. And quite frankly, I don't see a difference between myself and Guy Scott, our vice president. So he's quite, so what? I mean, he's a fellow Zambian, and we've worked on this issue together. We all share certain sentiments, and I think that's what drives us. That was not the case in South Africa. That was not the case in Rhodesia. And so the Rhodesians felt they needed to get back their land. The Zimbabweans said they wanted back their land. And I think this is where the current challenge is. They felt we've had to fight for this, and if it means that we have to defend it to the hilt, we'll do that. But what it has also done is that it has taken out even the good elements that would have been there before. In our particular case, part of the decision to actually not to sell land is because of that. We are basically leasing land. Even I lease land from the state. The only place where this is different is when I go to my village, which is the traditional land. There my father has land, which I claim to be my land. Okay? If I want it as on title, I would have to apply to the chief. The chief gives me, the village headman gives me permission. The chief gives me permission. I go to the commissioner in the district. I get endorsement. Then I take it to the land commissioner and say to him, "Can you now give me title to this piece of land, which is in my father's area, where my father's grave is, where my grandfather is?" But also, it's important for us to remember that not only is it in Africa that this has created a challenge. Our citizenship, wherever we are, our citizenship is always connected to the soil. It always is. Without the soil, you're not linked to the place. You grow in the place, but you're not linked. You don't feel you own it. And so that's the difference. And I thought that I might just, and I'm giving an opinion as not as Minister of Government, but I'm giving an opinion as a citizen of the world. And I think this is what has happened in Zimbabwe. This is what has taken place, and it's still fresh. The wound is still fresh, and the more we poke at it, the more it will continue to rise. But I think that in the long term, people will probably forgive, but they will not forget where they came from. Okay, and I mean, here we're talking about history of the Roman Empire, and we're talking about history of other countries, including this one. I don't think people forget where they came from. I think they always, it dims and pales away. But other than that, I would say that in our particular case, we haven't had that problem. A substantial part of the arable land that we're using for farming at the moment is held by some white farmers. Okay? Sometimes not used, and sometimes it's been used for speculative reasons. But we haven't had this reaction because it wasn't a fight, it was not a military fight that we had. I don't know if that helps.
Fine, thank you very much. Sir, would you let's say, there's a gentleman in the purple tie.
Okay.
Glorious purple tie.
I'm the executive chairman of the African and Caribbean Chamber of Commerce and Enterprise in the UK. We support African and Caribbean-led businesses in the UK. We have about 4,000 members. And last year, the combined turnover was about £3 billion. The question really is for both Andrew and perhaps the Minister as well. I really enjoyed your presentation, by the way, Minister. I think you touched on some key points that, from an African diaspora point of view, was of interest to me, and I'm sure to some of our members, around the training and development, and then you talked about it, and research as well, and also in terms of the job creation in the agricultural sector. Because these are, if you like, not really high-tech jobs that need to be created. These are things that can be easily worked on. The point really, though, is that when we talk about Africa, we have the issues in terms of lack of infrastructure. The reality is, in advanced economies where you do have the infrastructure, they are returning 1%, and Andrew said, average of 14% in Zambia. So really, lack of infrastructure cannot really be a barrier. I'm not saying the infrastructure shouldn't take place, but really from an investment point of view in Africa right now, it shouldn't be something that will turn people on. Skills and expertise obviously is important, and that's where I think from an African diaspora point of view we come in. In the UK alone, there's probably 3 to 5 million Africans in diaspora. In Europe, maybe 20, 30 million. They have the money to spend, they have the expertise, and they have the knowledge. And when I come to investment forums like this, I don't feel that you're talking to me. I feel you're talking to everybody else but an African, any diaspora that wants to come and invest in Africa. Because the investment that we make in Africa is instinctive, it's cultural, and it's an emotive one. And so we can go in there, make that decision, and get going for a long time, for the long term. So the question really is, what are your strategies for actually targeting and talking to the African diaspora business people in the UK and perhaps in Europe that might want to come and invest in Zambia?
Policy issue rather than an implementation issue. One of the challenges that I think we faced is that the African diaspora is diverse. Some have stayed outside their respective countries for quite a long time. Others have been forced out because they have been looking to probably participate in politics, and because of the political situation they've had to leave because of that, and I think that is probably the case in most cases as far as Zimbabwe is concerned. But then there are also those that have basically gone to study and never went back home. So they're yearning to go back home, but they probably feel, oh, until I raise so much money so that I can go and invest. And the others have, like in my own particular country, have said to us, oh, we want to have dual citizenship, okay, which has been the biggest statement. We want dual citizenship so that we're able to borrow in the countries of our sojourn and take the money back home to do the businesses. I have got views about that. I myself lived here in this country in 71 to 74. I was in the States in most of 1980. But the truth of the matter is this, that it's a choice that one has to make. Okay? There are obviously challenges back home. I think what most African countries have done, most governments have done, including my own, we are right now in the process of revising our constitution, and one of the technical committees has just recommended that people can have dual citizenship. I personally don't think that that's been a constraint, because the world has become so global that you are not dependent on your citizenship. You can go anywhere and borrow, so long as you've got a good project, you can be able to do that. But I think also it is used as a shield to say, I have not made enough money, I have not been a success. When you go back home, you find that those that were your schoolmates or university mates have done well, and so it's like, sometimes people get embarrassed and say, how can I go home without having purchased a certain type of car, a certain type of house, a certain type of income. I think that's what it is. Many of us could have stayed wherever we studied. I myself was offered a job to run between London and by the Rothschild between London and South America. I chose to go back home. So I think that there are many issues to that. But the policies, I think, vary country to country. But in many cases, they've allowed this dual citizenship. Whether to actually yield those particular results, I doubt very much. But the point you made was right. That most of those that go back home to make the investments do it instinctively. This is home. I must go back home and make my contribution. I think that's basically the driving factor. But governments, I don't think the governments.
The BCA has a very strong diaspora initiative, and if anyone is interested in pursuing that sign, the officers of the Council are here to talk to you about it on a one-to-one basis if necessary. Charles.
Charles Cutmore, BCA. I'd like to go back to the first question, actually, a follow-up question to that, Minister. I mean, the points you made about the different history of land tenure are very well taken. What I'd like to ask you is, how is the Zambian government acquiring, if that's the right word, these 100,000 hectare blocks of land for offer to outside, or indeed domestic investors? Because presumably most of that land has to be coming from village land or communal land, which you were just talking about earlier.
Right.
How are you going about it, and what difficulties is it creating?
Only a very small percentage is what we call government land. In other words, publicly owned, government-owned land. The bulk of it is owned by the traditional leaders, and what happens is that government then goes to the traditional leaders and says to them, this is what we would like to do for development in your area. However, in order for us to do this, we need tracts of land. And the traditional leaders sit with their councils and they agree, yes, we're going to give you space. And by the way, we are very fortunate. We are not under pressure for land, like Zimbabwe and Malawi and some of our neighbors. We have a small population and big tracts of land. So for that reason, we do not have that difficulty. So the chiefs know this is their government. they know that what the government is doing is to try and bring development in those areas. So the chiefs then grant the government, and the government takes over that land, and it becomes now a government-owned land, which then it can lend out. And of course, the chiefs expect that they will benefit because of the jobs that will be created, the wealth that will be created, and so on and so forth. That's basically what happens.
Yes,
I had difficulties identifying how much Enrich Pwende's investors had brought into the country. Because they would say to me, we have brought an asset. Here's an asset. Okay? And the cash, we don't know how much is brought in and how much is taken out of the country. Surely, any sensible government would want to know what is taking place. And that's what we wanted to have, so that the central bank would have a legal basis upon which they can say, declare to us what it is that you're bringing in. One of the considerations we have is that when individuals are bringing money for their companies, they ought to bring it through the central bank so that we can say, this is foreign investment that has come into the country. After that, it goes to their respective commercial banks. It's up to the commercial banks to implement how they want to use it. Any proceeds they have from outside, what has happened in the past is that a lot of the investors also keep the cash outside the country, outside the economy. And let me explain to you what has happened. The exchange rate is impacted because the currency is not in the country. It's not reflected in the accounts of the companies within the country. Our exchange rate is determined by the central bank calling the commercial banks and saying, give us your offer for dollar. How much are you offering to purchase dollar? How much are you offering to sell dollar? And after they've done that from our 20 commercial banks, the central bank then adds up this and averages it and says, this is our exchange rate. So if you do not have those balances in the bank accounts in the respective banks, it's completely excluded. And in order to clarify this, let me explain to you what has happened. In 2003, there was an investor who used Citibank to bring in money to buy treasury bills. Just because of $5 million injection, it increased, it revalued our currency, because now there was demand for kwacha, which you needed to purchase treasury bills because they're in local currency, and this lowered the exchange rate to a very favorable situation for the country. Then came the 2008 global crunch. The exchange rate was turning at $1 to local currency 3,500 to 3,600. That was the range, 100 kwacha difference of local currency. Immediately, because of the crunch, the global crunch, it shot up from 3,600 to 5,200. Now, when we reversed the situation and it went back to normality, the exchange rate never came back to 3.6. Okay? Why? Because most of the major exporters, in particular the mining companies, keep the money outside the economy. Now, if you have that situation and your exchange rate is high, what happens to inflation? What happens to the issues of cost? Because if you are a net importer, it means that your demand for dollar is going to be always higher than your supply. So the reason why countries export is because they want the money to come back to their countries so that they can use this for development. And that has not been the case. And as chairman of Economic Affairs and Labour of Parliament, I had cause to invite the mining companies to come and tell us. Some are keeping as much as $300, $400, $500 million outside the economy. This is creating a distortion. And it's creating high costs for those that are sticking and bring their money back. And they're saying, how come we are bringing our money back and it's being impacted negatively by those that are keeping money outside the country? That is what has happened.
That's great. If I could just respond very briefly, I completely agree with you. And the thing is, you made a strong argument for introducing a cap on the repatriation of profits. And I'm not...
There's no cap on repatriation.
No, what you just said is that there needs to be certain controls, the money
No,
can take abroad.
No, you are putting words in my mouth. I have not said that. No. That's your interpretation. I'm saying we need to have information. I mean, which economy, which central bank does not ask about what it's dealing with? How else do you determine that?
Okay, so my response to that then would be that the Bank of Zambia, the Act says it gives the central bank power not just to monitor but also to regulate.
But what's wrong with regulation?
No, so absolutely no problem with regulation.
Yeah.
But if I could just
look
make
at what has
my
happened.
point.
But I think it's important because this has been a big issue and I want to clarify that issue.
Yeah.
What has happened is this. In order for them to know how much money is coming into the country and not what the banks are holding, it is necessary for them to monitor this, that this is what has taken place. Okay? They will monitor that. Why does a central bank monitor? In order to manage the currency, especially when you've got a shortage of currencies. what is happening is that for investment purposes, and Andrew will say this, 5 years, the first 5 years you are normally exempt. You don't pay any taxes whatsoever. The next 3 years, you pay at 50% of what would be the due taxes. So for example, in the Ministry of Agriculture, our tax rate is 15%, all right, because it's a priority area. And so you would normally pay 50% of 15%, which is 7.5%. And then in the last 2 years, you pay at 75%. And this is to allow companies to build up their base and so on and so forth. However, what we see is that companies are now using that opportunity to do transfer pricing. Okay? In other words, you sell to a subsidiary company of the main company and you lower the rate deliberately. Let me give you an example. One mining company exports to Switzerland all the copper that's produced in my country, and no copper goes to Switzerland. You see what I mean? So that is, you have to regulate, you have to manage this in order to know what is taking place. And I don't think we're not capping any dividend, but we do expect that dividends will be externalized only when you're in a position where you're making profit, not when you're making losses and claiming a rebate from the central government.
It seems to be a question of semantics now, isn't it? Between regulation and monitoring.
No, I mean, it's also just, I mean, our main point is, I guess, investors want to know what is going to happen. Is a profit, repatriation cap going to be introduced or not? I'm sure there are good reasons for both, good arguments for and against, but can you assure us that it's not going to...
Once they've done their legal obligations, they've paid their taxes, if they're in a tax position,
yeah,
there's no restriction. They can repatriate their money as
and that will be the case for the next 5 years.
In fact, we've just done the statutory instruments that clarifies that position.
Okay.
Okay, can we change to... Could you come quickly to your question, please?
I'm coming to the question. The imperative is, as you would know, there's a deficit of wooden poles in Southern Africa, so that was the aim. We came to Zambia, literally couldn't get a meeting with anyone. We couldn't get a meeting with your agency, for instance. The only meetings we got with the likes of ZESCO, the ministry was very welcoming, with the likes of ZESCO, and the responses from there were, oh, all the products you offer, we tender for that. Okay, our intention was not to become entrepreneurs. We wanted to invest.
Sir, if I can interrupt you at this point, it seems to me that Robert, would you like to pick up on that, because I think I can understand what you're saying, and yet that seems to be.
I'm sure that my director could add 1 or 2 words. What is very clear is that we're looking for a process of supplying the poles. And you didn't get a meeting with ZBA. If that never happened, we can provide that meeting. And I'm glad you said the ministry was very accommodative. We would like to be much more proactive. If you had any impediment, we are prepared to see how best we can assist you. As a government and as a ministry, including ZBA, I think that we are committed to ensuring that we put a process that is transparent. If ZESCO passed you through those processes, I think that we are looking at a situation where we would promote transparency, even when we are looking for opportunities. I'm sure that there are many, several companies that would come through. So we should have a model on how best we get those investments coming forward. Those impediments can be resolved. Please do feel free to get in touch with us, and I can make an undertaking by myself.
That seems to be a pretty good commitment, sir. So, sir, over there.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. John Lukomana, and I run Makaya Windy, which means power in coming together. And I'm so delighted, Honorable Stinger, to see how you're marketing precious Zambia so very well. It's commendable. And I think I also found a business opportunity because I am a motivator. I don't just speak. I would like to speak to our fellow British that you're moving slightly slowly. We can have a good conversation on that. My contribution and link comes into the Zambia story. I love the Zambia story because it gives me a lot of hope, in the sense that, unless I got the message wrong, that the people that founded the organization or the business didn't have money. In other words, they rose up to the challenge, and today Zambia is a force to reckon with. I went to Zambia in September last year, and I drank something which was very nice and tasty, because said, wow, this is good. I said, by Zambia, they're into everything. That's very, very good. Now, here's the point. In terms of the shortfall on soya, you talked about how much you need for your other things. How would you work with the SMEs if they went to do small-scale farming to grow soya? Here's the situation. Here's an SME. They grow their soya. There's no market. They're the only big guys who can buy. Would there be a scheme or from the government? Is there schemes that protects the small-scale farmer to actually supply Zambia because they need soya, rather than if they grow soya and they don't want to buy it? Why I'm asking this question? Because I'm interested. I'm an entrepreneur, and part of my role is to galvanize Zambians living in diaspora and Zambians and friends of Zambians to why investing in Zambia and Africa. And this works because we've been doing this for 7 years. First of all, we've begun capacity building. That is to say, this mind can be changed. Once a new information is in mind, you can think better and do things well. This is my interest. If I have a very positive answer on this one, I can assure you that next trip, I'll be able to visit Zambia with a bandwagon of diaspora people on my back and invest in Zambia. Why do I say this? Because I have testimony that I can point to. When people have a clear vision and there's an uptick, they will bring their money in. My colleague Fola talked about the power of the diaspora people. This is really true, and I read on the World Bank and the economists, and actually that statistic is only reflecting those people who use the real system to transfer money. There are those people who go with pocket money, like some of the friends I know, it's not registered. There's power in them. And I want to see whether or not we can partner with them, because I'm very willing to go and start up something on soya growth.
Unfortunate history in the country, particularly with maize, whereby unscrupulous speculators go into the rural areas, offer the farmers, the small-scale farmers, a fraction of what the value of the crop is, and out of desperation, because they're offering cash, they take those at a suboptimal price. What we're talking about is something very different. What we're talking about is a scheme whereby we would guarantee a market price, and that amount would be a contract that whatever is produced we would collect and take delivery of at that price, and in certain instances we would provide input to the farmers in the form of fertilizer and any other technology and infrastructure assistance, with the objective of getting a greater quantity of soya in. It's what we would call enlightened self-interest. We need the soya, we want people to grow it, so the relationship is an arm's length, it's a market related, and we would seek to increase the overall production and secure substantially more for our own internal usage. So if the gentleman has a genuine core of farmers that would like to be involved, it is something that we would welcome greatly, and if he could just meet with me afterwards, I will put him in touch with the right people to talk to.
We're getting to the point now of
reflected most of the things that are on the ground.
Correct.
And we would like to tell you that we want to push ourselves from those levels to go higher in order to ensure that we move in this sphere. We are very grateful about that honest report, and we're working on that.
Just a quick one. I think that the point that has been made, one of the reasons why we're doing these outgrower schemes, one of the reasons why we've got these farm blocks is to do just that. And also please remember that under the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry, we're also doing small-scale enterprises in clusters. We're doing industrial clusters everywhere. In every district, there's got to be one. Please don't even hesitate. The last one that was raised about not being able to see somebody senior, well, let me just share this with you. Please remember that even if you come to Zambia, you have to make appointments, and it will not always be Enrich Kwende because he might be in London at the time. So you may have to see his directors. But what I see is that many people insist, I must see the minister. And the minister may not be available. He may be doing a cab memo. He may be attending to field events. He may be doing other things. Please be prepared to see officers below the minister It may not even be deputy ministers. It may be much lower than that, but they are quite capable of bringing the matters up. The system does work. But if you insist on seeing the president, and the president is preoccupied, and you don't want to see the minister, then you will have frustrations. But I can assure you, by our being here, the fact that we've got ZTA in place is a vessel and destination you must go. And there's a young lady right there in the pink, right there, 3-1 right there. She's waving her hand. You can't go wrong. She'll guide you. Okay?
Well, I'm very sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I think our time is up, and I'm sure there are a few people wanting to have a bite to eat and a drink and a chat on a one-to-one basis with whomsoever. So I think unfortunately, I think we could go on like this for quite a long time, I suspect. But I'd like to wind it up and ask Jonathan Lawley if he would just thank the ministers and the panelists, and then we can go and have something to drink.
Makureni mkwai, makureka mtu nyonse, yadu kwamba twarumba kapati, kuriba minister, kuriba high commissioner, kuriba pati bazwaku, kurusaka bawi bantu, bari kupandi lula kawochu, makani mabotu roko, kuzwaku Zambia. Swebo mubisi tulizite kuti Zambia chisi chibotu kuzwa zisi zionse vya Afrika. Don't wait kwa chasiara kuti zionse ba member ba BCA bamba chitonga.